Welcome to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. Comment is the big conversation, the great debate, but it can only be that if you join in. That's why, above all, I need your telephone calls. 44208-601-4555. That's the number to call. You call us, we'll call you back. Establish a clear line, and remember, if you get on the television with me, the volume on your television has to be down at 0, or I'll have to pass swiftly on because no one will understand either of us. You can also SMS the show on 447800008066, or you can email me at comment@presstv.co.uk. You can even send me a tweet at comment_presstv. The subject tonight is one to which I say with melancholy that we continually have to return to. It is the sad story of Syria, one of the most ancient, greatest of all the Arab countries, historic center of pan-Arabism, resistance to foreign occupation, and one of the most beautiful countries on the earth, or at least it was. That is, before the last 4 years nearly, in which the country has been torn to shreds. More than 200,000 of its people killed, millions of its people displaced or made refugees. And the economic loss to Syria of the last 4 years, well, I simply could not calculate that, and I don't think anyone else could either. Here's an example of what virtually every town, village, hamlet in Syria now looks like. It has been total war. It looks like Berlin in 1945, and that's because the scale of the fighting has been so great. And I'm asking tonight, who is to blame for Syria's 200,000 dead and all the rest of the damage? Well, it would take me longer than I've got to fully apportion all of the blame, certainly to put percentages on it. So let me just run through, at random as it were, all the different individuals and countries and states and governments and organizations, multinational, international and regional, who have to take some of the blame for the catastrophe. I'm sorry to say that the first part of the blame I'm going to allocate is to the regime in Syria itself. It had many years to reform itself. After the transfer of power to President Bashar al-Assad, we were promised all kinds of reforms. Some reforms did take place, but mainly on the economic front and mainly to the disadvantage of ordinary Syrians. Those reforms freed up what had been a largely state-dominated economy, freed them up from, you might say, the socialism of a previous era. So free enterprise, privatization, and so on were all unleashed on the Syrian people. I think largely to their disadvantage, but that is my own ideological point of view. What never happened is that political reform did not march side by side with economic reform, which it should have done. I myself conveyed to the Syrian authorities many, many times the need to quicken the pace or even just start the kind of reforms that needed to be carried out. Secondly, the reform movement, revolution, Arab Spring, call it what you like, when it arose in Syria, the Syrian regime handled it extremely badly, particularly in the area of Derra, where absolute brutality, savagery was meted out to people merely painting political slogans on walls or daring to raise political slogans calling for the democratization of the country. The third area of responsibility rests with the Syrian opposition internally, who turned to arms, militarized their protest movement long before they had to, and with catastrophic results. What they could have done, should have done, was maintain a stance of peaceful, unarmed protest demanding change and reform. But they very, very quickly militarized that situation. The fourth area of responsibility lies with the foreigners who then flooded into Syria in their hundreds of thousands. I used to say 100,000. Actually, now I believe it is hundreds of thousands of foreigners. Not just Arabs, I mean. In a way, they're not foreigners, if you believe in pan-Arabism. I'm talking about people from Chechnya, talking about people from Kenya, from Somalia. I'm talking about people from Portsmouth and East London and Birmingham and Manchester. I'm talking about people who were living their lives here in Britain or in Belgium or in the Netherlands or in France or in Germany or in Sweden or in Denmark, who had grown up in Western countries, have nothing whatsoever to do with Syria, nothing whatsoever to do with the Arab world, don't speak or didn't speak a word of Arabic, didn't understand anything of the complexities of Syrian society, which is a society containing dozens of religions, several nationalities, ethnicities, Kurdish people, Arabic people, Druze, Muslims, Sunni, Shia, Christians. Many, many strands went into the making of the tapestry of Syrian society. Its Christian population, for example, 2,000 years old, still speaking the language of Jesus, Aramaic, with some of the most treasured historic religious places, shrines important to Shia people, to Christian people, many, many others. The next layer of responsibility, and I'm ascending in order of importance now, is the Arab regimes, every one of them rotten to the core, every one of them a dictatorship itself, every one of them practicing one family rule, who poured billions, tens, scores of billions of dollars into the destruction of Syria, all in the name of human rights, freedom, and democracy, when there are no human rights, no freedom, no democracy in their own countries. And you know the states to which I refer. And lastly, to the Western countries, the former colonial powers, Britain, France, the United States of America, who piled in, forcing their satrapies in the Persian Gulf to pay for their policy of doing everything, including killing anyone, everyone, in order to bring about the downfall of the Syrian regime. Not for any of the bad things about the Syrian regime, not at all, but for the good things about the Syrian regime. Because the Syrian regime was backing the Palestinian resistance, the Lebanese resistance, because the Syrian regime had relations, good ones, with the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's why the colonial powers wanted to destroy Syria. I could now go on to talk about the United Nations, but what's the use? Let's go to the first caller. My old friend, stroke adversary, my mentor, my tormentor, Aidan in the UK. Aidan, go ahead.
Hi, George. We're not adversaries. We're brothers in arms, and that's all there is to it.
Thank you, brother.
And a great speech you gave at Westminster this week on Palestine.
Thank you. It's been picked up a lot, actually. There's hundreds of thousands of views of it. Thanks, Aidan.
Yeah, it was a fantastic speech, George, and you just gave it to him straight.
It was only 4 minutes, by the way. It just shows you what you can get into 4 minutes.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing speech. That's all I can say. And everyone was listening to what you had to say. You said it crystal You made it absolutely clear, and you broke it down that even a 5-year-old kid could understand and not disagree with what you said there.
Thank you, brother. All praise due to God.
Yeah, God bless you, George. God bless Palestine.
Thank you, brother.
I don't want to get into a polemic about Syria because, you know, we've had tussles before on this one.
So please speak your mind, Aidan.
All right, I'll pick up on your third point on the Syrian opposition taking up arms too quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, why did Assad brutally put down the protests when they tried
I did say that. That was my points 1 and 2, yeah.
Yeah. And was he just taking a leaf out of his father, what he did 30 years before? I mean, was it the same regime that was going on?
Well, I mean, let me interject. I'll let you back in.
Yeah.
All regimes, when faced with an existential threat to their existence, will behave in that way. If such a challenge existed to the British system, for example, if a revolution happened in Britain and people were challenging to actually overthrow the British system, the monarchy, the state, transform it, revolutionize it, then you can be sure that the British would start shooting too. So all regimes do that. The task of a revolution, and the Iranians are the best example, is to amass so many people in your revolution that the state simply can't kill them all and therefore stops killing them at all, because they know that when the bullets run out on their gun, the people are going to tear them to pieces, so they don't actually fire on the people in the end. That's the key to a successful revolution, in my view. Go ahead, Aidan.
Yeah, well, that didn't happen in Syria, did it?
No, but they didn't amass, and that's worth analysing. They didn't amass the sufficient critical mass of the population, and the reason for that is the complexity of Syrian society, the sectarian, religious, ethnic, national characteristics of Syria. There were many Syrian minorities who feared that if the regime fell, a kind of intolerant, takfiri form of Islam would come to rule. And in a way, those fears have proven well-founded, don't you think?
Yeah, this is the final chapter of the Sykes-Picot carve-up of the Middle East. The Middle East is still a Western 19th century neo-colonial state. It is still governed by neo-colonial interests. Yeah. And what happened in Syria, Iraq, Tunisia, Egypt, and all these post-Ottoman territories, this is what's happened. This is the consequence of it now. The deaths of 200,000 Syrians, as terrible as it is, was going to happen. The death of 1 million Iraqis, even more a tragedy, was going to happen. And it will continue to go on like this because the actual status quo, that is, Britain, France, America, and the Jewish state, still want to govern that part of the world like an apartheid, slave, neo-colonial, master-servant system, and they'll never change that. They don't want to change that. No,
of course you could have included places like Saudi Arabia and so on, which are even more important to the imperialist interest. But you're right, and I agree with you on this point, Aidan. The status quo in the Arab world has long ago become untenable, unsustainable, was bound to fall in one way or another, and to one thing or another. I take the view, probably be different to yours, I take the view that the only thing that can unite all the Arabs is Arabism, is the idea of the Arabs as one people, from the Atlantic to the Gulf, from Marrakesh to Bahrain. Because religion can't do that, because not all the Arabs are of the same religion. They all believe in one God, but they're not all of the same religion. And even the majority religion, which is of course Islam, is divided into different kinds of Islam. Not just, I mean, Sunni, Shia. I'm talking about Sufism. I'm talking about the Wahhabism. I'm talking about all the different madhab within Islam, within Sunni Islam. Then you've got the Shiites, you've got the Christians, you've got the Druze, and so on. And you can't unite them under the banner of Islam, which in any case begs the question, which Islam? Whereas all the Arabs could unite under the banner of Arabism. That's my view. Aidan, it's been a pleasure, as always, talking to you. You're a gentleman and a scholar. Bani is in Geneva. Let's go to him. Bani, welcome to the show.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway. God bless
Good
you
evening.
all, your team and yourself. As I said once, we need many people like you in this planet Earth. It's not enough like one of you, really. You know, and then you just mentioned so clear, like crystal clear, all about this. But let's see how we can stop and bring these people in front of the justice who they started this genocide, you know, because this is like a mini genocide which is going on in poor Syria. The Syrian government, as long as they don't recognize this state of Israel, they will suffer like that. So unless we make somehow this denunciation worldwide, like Philip Morris they put on their cigarettes, somehow we show all these pictures, what they are doing everywhere until the people really wake up and we stop feeding the injustice. Because as long as we are going in this, you know, we are getting used to this news. Every day is going on, and people, you know, we don't really make a big move. It's not enough.
That's right, Bani. There's going to be nothing left of Syria at this rate. I mean, it has already suffered such grievous wounds. It's difficult to see how and how long it would take and who would pay for its reconstruction. It has been utterly, absolutely devastated, not just in physical terms, though that is gigantic enough, but the damage to the social fabric, to this tapestry of which I speak, is enormously difficult to see how it can be repaired. Iraq is not far behind, maybe not behind at all, in terms of the destruction that it has sustained. And Bani, here's a point worth making. I say this as a supporter of Arabism. The Ba'ath Party ruled in Syria and Iraq for decade after decade. If their raison d'etre of Arab unification, Arab unity, had made any progress at all, if Syria and Iraq had been one country, as ought to have been the case, then how different would the Arab world look today? You'd have one Arab country ruled by Arab nationalism from the Mediterranean to the Gulf, with all that oil, all that gas, all those people. My goodness, how different the Arab world would look today. Bani, thanks for that call.
Yes.
Here's my old friend Robert in Scotland. Robert, go ahead, my friend.
Good evening, George.
Good evening.
I think that the fault of the 200,000 dead in Syria and the millions of displaced refugees is primarily the fault of the Western powers and the Gulf states for refusing to aid peace in any way. Instead, they have fanned the flames by flooding Syria full of guns and technology, all of which are heading towards the murdering, savage, brutal terrorists of Jabhat al-Nusra and ISIL, so that they can use the prehistoric tactic of divide and conquer. They have sown the seeds of sectarianism in Syria, and the fanatics of al-Nusra and ISIS are killing innocent men, women and children, declaring them to be Rafida, when in reality they are mostly killing Sunni Muslims. Just because a country's leadership is of one sect, of one religion, does not mean everyone falls under that sect.
No, well,
Bashar
al-Assad is from that minority sect, Alawiyin, but his wife is a Sunni. His father-in-law, mother-in-law are Sunnis. Most of the officers in the Syrian army are Sunnis. Most of the soldiers in the Syrian army are Sunnis. But that doesn't make any difference to the takfiris we're talking about, because it's not good enough for them to be a Sunni. You have to be just so, the right kind of Sunni. Robert in Scotland, age 15, out of the mouths of babes comes great wisdom, as usual. Robert, thanks for the call. Shaz is in the United Kingdom. Who is to blame for Syria's 200,000 death toll? Shaz, go ahead.
Hello, good evening, George. How are you?
By the grace of God, I'm good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Honored to speaking to you again. Couple of points. First of all, I think one thing that all of us Muslim community or Muslim population is missing is a leadership. And I'm going to suggest one thing here. And I think for all the Muslims around the world, I think we should all look up to you and have you as our leader. That way we can't say whether he's a Sunni or a Shia. Have you as our leader, you representing ourselves, and we follow under your leadership and try to tackle all the issues that we're facing. And my second point is, I think, yes, certainly the West is behind. It's a hidden agenda, or it's not even a hidden agenda. There's a clear agenda out there to give the bad name to Islam, and the suicide bombings and the terrorism attacks. They all benefit the West. But I think as a population, as a religion, as a people, we need to look at ourselves, and these religious leaders need to look at themselves, that although the West may be supporting those groups and everything, but the people who are carrying out those suicide bombings are actually Muslims.
Bravo.
Where are we missing? Where is our religious scholars? Where is the piece of religion that Islam is? Why that message is not getting out, and those West are so easy for them to recruit people wanting to go out there and do the suicide bombing that only achieves their own objectives, and it only benefits themselves.
Well, the second part of your call is pure solid gold. I had to applaud it because it's something I didn't say in my introduction, but it is central to this question. When we're apportioning blame, the Ummah has to take a big share of the blame because of its disunity, because of its lack of clarity, because of its ability, apparently endlessly, to be used by others who hate all Islam, or at least care nothing for all Islam. The ability of those people to use Muslims to murder each other for the benefit of those who aren't Muslims and have no interest in the state of being of the Muslims. It's something I should have said. I felt I'd spoken too long, but it's absolutely clear. Although the West and Israel and so on are all involved, the people who are cutting out the hearts and eating them are Muslims. The people who are cutting off the heads are Muslims. The people who are destroying churches are Muslims. Now, Islam is not to blame for that. Islam is perfect. It's the Muslims who are not perfect. And the perfection of the Muslims is something that everybody has to attend to as a matter of grave, grave urgency. Shah's a brilliant call. Let me go on to the comment wall and take some tweets in the moment or two that I've got left before the break. Let's see. Which one will I go to? Bobbert, what is your assessment of Obama's presidency? It's been a disastrous failure. Red Worker ML, he's been proven correct that the opposition are the tools of the West and its Wahhabi allies. I don't entirely accept that. There were, certainly in the beginning, perfectly legitimate voices of opposition in Syria, and they ought to have been listened to and negotiated with. But once the militarization of that opposition occurred and a state of war begun, which has now become total war, the country looking, as I said, like Berlin in 1945, there was no space anymore for discussion. But it's not going to be ended militarily. The regime is too strong to be overthrown, but it's too weak to conquer all of the Syrian Arab Republic. So the only way this is going to end is by negotiation. And it's about time everybody got back round the table in Geneva. to try and bring about an end to this. Of course, you can't negotiate with ISIL, you can't negotiate with Al-Qaeda, but there are people in Syria, in the opposition, who can and should be negotiated with. I'll be back very shortly with the second half of comment after this short news bulletin. Don't go away. Welcome back to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. Comment is the big conversation, the great debate, but we need you to join in. So get on the telephone, send me an SMS, send me a tweet, send me an email. Tonight we are discussing Syria and asking who is to blame for Syria's 200,000 dead. Well, you heard my point of view more than once in the first half. Now I want to hear more of yours. Let's go to Mr. Zachary in Aberdeen. I hope you're going to watch your P's and Q's this evening, Mr. Zachary. Go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. George Galloway. Good evening to you, and assalamu alaikum to all Muslims. I go to the solution. The solution is an international tribunal, like a Nuremberg trial, and those criminal states that should be brought in that court of justice based on the law and the facts and what they have done and unlawful activity against the Syrian nation, against the Iraqi nation, against the international law and against the international community is Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Israel, United States of America, Turkey, UK, France, and also Kuwait and Emirates. And these countries and these governments, they are the criminals of this world at this era. And then I believe Mr. Bashar Assad has done no wrong except doing his duty. Regarding the economy of Syria, it was impossible to act as you said, and whatever they have done, it was based on the situation that Syria is living in because of Israel, and on this basis it was impossible to do something else. Bashar Assad, as his father, they have done the best for the Syrian nation and also the Middle East. I hope.
Okay, let me respond to both of those points and stay on the line. Who is going to convene this tribunal? Which court is going to bring all these big, powerful imperialist countries before it?
Yeah.
Which court is going to do that?
Well, an international court should be set up by the all nations. Whether the American and
by Syria, you mean?
Saudi, yeah.
But how is that going to bring Britain to court?
Well, they can put them on absentee.
In absentia, okay. So not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. Let's quit while we're ahead on that one. On the second, President Hafiz al-Assad had one form of economy. It wasn't a great success. It didn't deliver to all the people all the things that they would have liked, but things were shared far more equally in the era of Hafiz al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad introduced what he called free market reforms, privatization. That's why the West loved him in the beginning. This is why Tony Blair brought him to London, and why the Queen rode up the Mall in an open-top carriage with him. This is why the Queen allowed President Bashar and his wife to live for several nights in Buckingham Palace itself, because he was an economic reformer, as they put it. In other words, he was privatizing the Syrian economy in the way that we in Britain and other neoliberal economic countries have liberalized and privatized theirs. Now, I prefer Hafez al-Assad's economic model to Bashar al-Assad's economic model. But that wasn't my point. My point was that along with economic reform had to come political reform, and it didn't. And that's why we're in the mess that we're in today. If President Bashar had stood in a free and fair democratic presidential election after the fall of Ben Ali, I asked him to. If he had done so, he would have been elected. He would have been the only democratic leader in the entire Arab world. But the regime around him seemed not to be able to allow that. Let's go to John in Malawi. John, welcome to the show.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, you're on now. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Mr. George.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening. How are you?
By the grace of God, I'm good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, me, I want to blame the West.
The West is definitely partly to blame, yes.
Yes, the West, because the West, they took themselves like the United States of America, the UK, and they took themselves like the superpowers. Why can't they go there with the Air Force, with the United Nations, and bomb the so-called ICL? But they are failing to do so. Instead, people are just dying, plenty like that.
Well, my experience, I don't know about yours, John, is that when Western countries bomb other countries, their former colonies, it never really does any good and actually produces much more harm than good. That's my take on the matter. It's why I opposed Britain getting involved in bombing Iraq. No, we've lost John. We've lost John. Let's go to Rahman in South Africa. Rahman, go ahead, sir.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, John.
Wa alaikum salam. Thanks very much. Go ahead.
The problem that the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam has prophesied about, he said there'll come a time nothing will be left of Islam except its name, and the Holy Quran except its melody and calligraphy. The mosques will be built beautifully, but it will be empty and void of righteousness. And the so-called ulama will be the worst creatures under the firmament of the heavens. Then the Holy Prophet ﷺ gave a solution in the Quran itself, where God says, He will not leave the believers in the condition that they are in until He separates the good believers from the rotten believers. And nor will He reveal His unseen except to those whom He chooses to be messengers. Then God commands the believers to believe again in God and His messengers. Unfortunately, these pagan Arab leaders, they have drifted far away from the Holy Quran. They have forsaken the book. They've become, as the Holy Prophet described, they'll become worse than the Jews in the latter days, in their behavior, in their characteristics, in their belief. From north to east, west to south, the whole Middle East, unfortunately, all those pagan leaders, they've abandoned Islam. Islam has only been used as a name. My advice to many Muslims, they should not go for Hajj, they should boycott it, because Hajj has become a commercial thing to assist these pagan Saudis who are in power now. And the solution is that God will send another prophet, whether you call him Messiah, call him Mahdi, call him Mujaddid, whatever. Another prophet has come, but the Muslim world has turned their backs against him. They have refused to accept him. And this is the price that they will pay. As the Holy Prophet said, the Dajjal will overwhelm them and humiliate them. So the believers who call themselves believers, they should believe again in God's messenger. Thank you, John.
Well, that's a very powerful argument from Rahman in South Africa. He was referring, of course, to the behavior of the Jews when they desecrated the Sabbath and turned against their belief In the time of the Prophet Muhammad, he wasn't making a general reference to Jews, of course. But there was much in what Rahman said. I didn't know this prophecy, but it's a remarkably accurate prophecy and describes rather vividly the situation that we currently are in. Thanks for that call from South Africa. Let's go back to the United Kingdom. Talk to Mrs. Hussein. Mrs. Hussein, welcome.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Go ahead.
Yes. You asked the question, who is the killer of Syrian, and you gave the answer as well already. So we know who is behind the killing of the Syrian people, and there are countless number. And top of the number is Israel and America and Saudi Arabia. And actually, this is the 24 countries were involved, and unfortunately, the Saudis had a great role in this whole affair. And unfortunately, Saudi, Qatari, and Palestinian as well. Do you know that you find the authenticity of this news, that Palestinians were also involved, the killing in Syrian people. Even Hamas killed the Syrian people. You can find the authenticity of this news, and this is a pity. And now 80% of Palestinians are killing in Iraq. Now, whom to blame? We don't know whom to blame. Islamic Iran have every last Friday of Ramadan has Quds Day, that promoting the Palestine. And
no, I'll tell you, Mrs. Hussein, there's a lot of propaganda around this, and it's very important that we don't spread it further without sources and without evidence.
That's right.
Hamas made mistakes in relation to Syria, no doubt at all about that. But the Syrian government and people remain committed to the liberation of Palestine, and they know of the role played by some of the other actors that you mentioned. But that doesn't mean that the holy cause of Palestine and Jerusalem and its liberation has left the Syrian mind and heart. It hasn't at all. Thanks for the call. Omar is in Toronto. Let's hear from Omar. Go ahead.
Hey, George, how are you, brother?
By the grace of God, good, Omar. Thanks for the call. Go ahead.
Mostly responsible with this issue that going on in Syria and Iraq, will say no one else to be blamed except the Saudis, Qataris, and Turkey, along the U.S. allies. And I don't know why our world leaders keep quiet, and we really know what's behind of everything that is going on. We have seen the consequences of invasion of Iraqi. No benefits, nothing has been found except demolishing of the cities, infrastructures, and looting of government.
Omar? Oh, what a pity. We lost you because you were on to something there. Absolutely correct about the invasion and occupation of Iraq. But it's not just in Muslim countries. It is mainly in Muslim countries these days, but not only. I just watched Full Metal Jacket the other night and watched all over again the unbelievable savagery of the United States of America in its bombardment, its chemical weapons, and all the rest in Vietnam. They killed millions of Vietnamese people, not just in my lifetime, but in my political lifetime, in the lifetime of my political work. They were massacring people in their millions in Vietnam. So you don't have to be a Muslim or an Arab to be on the receiving end of this kind of thing. And in the last 12 months, we have seen the overthrow of the elected government in Ukraine, for example. The deliberate subversion, arming of terrorists, backing of terrorists, funding of terrorists in Ukraine to overthrow the government there and replace it with a regime pliant to Western demands, European and North American. Thanks, though, for a great call. Sorry we lost you in Toronto. Let's go to Birmingham, United Kingdom. Jonathan. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Good evening, George.
Good evening to you, sir. Go ahead.
Right. It's very unfortunate that I would say the Arab world, as well as Muslims, are to be blamed for the killings in Syria. The Arabs are hypocrites. They are,
well, all 350 million of them?
Right. I would blame the Arabs as well as Muslims.
Which Arabs, Which Arabs, Jonathan? There's 350 million Arabs.
Yeah,
I can assure you that the great majority of them are not hypocrites.
The Qataris, the Saudis, all those involved in helping the ISIL and so-called Arab people, as well as the...
You're talking about the regimes, yeah?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
The Americans, the English, and so on. They are the main cause of it. So it is better the Arabs should be aware that even the Europeans are uniting themselves. It doesn't matter whether you are Christian or you are Muslim or you are speaking French or English. They are trying to unite. Why can't the Arabs also open their eyes, open their ears, and let them also unite? Turkey they've been fooling Turkey all along. That Turkey wants to join the union. They are refusing to join to accept the union because they are Muslims. They should understand that. According to one book of Islam, that should not think badly of your friend, and your friend too should not do something badly like you think about him.
You've lost me, Jonathan. But the first part of what you said was absolutely correct. I didn't really follow the rest. Sorry. Going to Nigeria to talk to Adam. Adam, welcome.
Welcome, Mr. George. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Go ahead, Adam.
I'm calling you from Nigeria.
Yeah.
Is the West are to blame for all this insurgency that is happening in the Syria and Iraq?
Go on.
Because the West are the ones being sponsoring the militancy. They are the ones being giving them the weapons. Yeah.
They gave them the weapons. They gave them the money. They gave them the media, diplomatic and political support. They did all that. That's true.
Of course.
That's true.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Adam, in Nigeria. Nasser is in London. Nasser, go ahead. Or Nader, is it? Nasser.
Yes, Nasser, George. Good evening. And
good evening, sir. Go ahead.
As always, I always say, the atrocities in Syria and Iraq and all that, it's all, that there is a third party. And the third party is for the safeguarding of the illegal state of the Zionist Israel. Now, if you talk about the wars, look what happened in Libya, in Iraq, in Egypt, and whoever has got a border with Israel is not settled.
Nasser, take your mouth away, a bit away from the phone. Go ahead.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but just don't go too near the phone.
Yes. Anyway, you go back to the people who created Israel, who benefits from these atrocities. They are depopulating the Muslim Ummah, and of course, the main thing is to deviate people from Gaza, what's happening in Gaza. Now, when you look at what's happening in Syria, it's been happening in Palestine for the last 60 years. So now in Syria, in Iraq, there is no single president, Muslim president, Arab, except Iranians and the South Americans, the Latino, the Venezuela, Cuba, and North Korea, who condemned the atrocity in Middle East and especially Gaza.
Okay, now, a very good couple of points there. I need to press on because I need to go to the Twitter wall to take some of the written material that's coming in on Twitter. Nawab says Saudi is out of 50 years contract with the USA, so they are further developing the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. USA needs other half. Okay, Alison Sessi Who's to blame? Assad didn't reform, handled the Arab Spring badly, the militarization of the opposition, foreigners and foreign governments. Well, that's quite like what I said, Alison. Thanks. I'm grateful for your backing on that. We're asking, who is to blame for Syria's 200,000 dead? Lever, he's a sensible fellow. Let's hear from him. Go ahead, Lever.
Always a pleasure, George.
Thanks, brother. Go ahead.
I think it's quite simple, really. We have a certain percentage of people in the world which are basically sociopathic, insane people. And the way that the world is structured, that these people end up getting in power because of the system which it is.
Bad luck. Now, it's our bad luck.
No, it's just it's actually something like 50% of the America's sort of trade and all the rest of it is arms production. So basically, they just need to sell more arms for the insane, crazy people to make loads of money. Plus, also, it's the perfect storm of. I actually believe that the Crusades started 1191, whatever it was.
1189, Richard the Lionheart departed to recover Jerusalem from the people who lived there. Lever, thanks. I'm pressing on because I've only time for one more call, and it's in Shiraz, in Iran, from Behruz. Go ahead, Behruz.
Hello there, George.
Yes.
Hello there, George.
Go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, please, quickly.
Yes, I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to kick off by putting flesh a bit on what, in first place, triggered or spawned the commencement of the Syrian strife in Syria. That's torn apart the country. In my perspective, before any of the Western or regional countries tried to get involved themselves in that execrable situation, it was the failure of the Bashar regime to deliver a genuine democracy to its people, to implement what they have been pledging to their people for decades, rather than camping for the easy option. That would be to let the people have the grievance towards the shanking of the...
Sorry, Behruz, I'm losing you. I'm losing you also. Sorry, the quality of the line is just not good enough. Farouk in Toronto has just squeezed on for the last call. Go ahead, Farouk.
Yes, my name is Farouk. I'm from Toronto, Canada. We have met you a couple of times here in Toronto, John, and it was really...
I've spoken many times in Toronto, yes.
Yes, definitely. When the minister allows you to come in, that's the key issue.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I just have to make a comment. There was an earlier caller who said that you should be the leader of the, of the Muslims, representing them because you don't represent any sectarian divide. So I just wanted to add on to that because right now the leadership is there. There's no question about it, and that is without any prejudice and without losing any logic. But the thing is, we have the whales of sectarianism and divide, which was left by the colonial powers, which has made us not to find the right leadership. If there's any leadership that we think that's a leadership, it's basically a charade. There's nothing there.
Well, I'll tell you what, Farouk, we're running out of time. You'll need to phone back next week to continue this. But let me just say this. I didn't respond to that call earlier for obvious reasons. But the one thing I'm absolutely certain of, as long as the Muslims allow themselves to be so easily divided, to be ready to murder each other for the edification and the entertainment and the profit of others, the profit of others, rather than following the line of the prophet, then nobody's going to get anywhere. It's been marvelous for me. I hope it was for you, and if it was, come back next week, God willing.
Hello, just comment your name and the Facebook that number. And just make sure that your television volume's set to 0. So 0. Can you spell your name for me? Yeah, I know.